One of the benefits of being a content creator is that even when your channel is relatively small, developers and publishers, especially those producing indie games, are almost always more than happy to provide you with a review copy of their game, because hey, the more eyes they can draw towards their product, the happier they are. Even if it's only a few hundred or a few thousand at a time. And in most cases, I'm more than happy to oblige, as it's my belief that there are a ton of indie games that go widely unnoticed and unappreciated by other content creators, and the general gaming public at large. The problem is, though, that while almost every day my inbox is flooded with at least a dozen new review copies of different games, hardly any of them are even worth my time. But it doesn't look good when you build up a reputation of requesting keys and then never using them, or having keys submitted to you and then never using them. Also, I'll admit, it's sometimes fun to play a bad game just to revel in the atrocity of its design. Sadly, not even this low bar of approval can be met in the game we're going to be discussing today by the name of Nemesis: Race Against the Pandemic. I'm not even going to beat around the bush here in this video. This is by far the worst game I've played this year, and probably one of the worst games I've ever featured on this channel ever. I physically got a headache and felt nauseous while playing, which almost never happens to me. I'm not one of those players who normally has any kind of bodily reaction to playing games, not even with stuff like motion blur, which I know many other gamers, both casual and hardcore alike, suffer from, at least to some degree. But this game is just a visual and aesthetic nightmare. It's an eyesore, it really is, it's visual diarrhea. You start the level with some generic automated text-to-English robotic voice giving you the description of your mission, but you might as well completely disregard it yourself since the game basically does in of itself. You're then immediately and awkwardly dropped into the level with no indicator of what you're supposed to do. One thing you may notice right off the bat, and I did too, was that the player character looks like a poorly rendered Unity asset replica of the now ex-Twitch streamer, I believe Dr. Disrespect. I'll admit, I don't really immerse myself in Twitch culture all that much, but even I recognize a Dr. Disrespect knockoff when I see it. Shooting is just downright painful in this game, as I suppose playing this game in general also is. Not only is the recoil insufferable, you can barely even see the damn crosshair because of how blinding the glare is on the grass and most objects in the game. Ammo just appears as big floating symbols scattered haphazardly around the map. In my entire short-lived time playing this game, I've never once come close to running out of ammo, and the amount of ammo I've collected is entirely disproportional to the amount I've actively fired off. At one point I probably had over 600 bullets in my magazine. The cover system is, like the rest of the game, completely broken. I don't think the developer really understands how hitboxes work. I've had a few moments where I've been able to successfully shoot enemies through solid walls and other forms of cover. And likewise, I've seen enemies inexplicably be able to fire bullets through solid buildings and other obstructing objects. But I suppose I should at least appreciate the duality of the broken mechanic. If enemies can shoot me through multiple solid walls, at least I can do the same to them and fight in their own terms. Almost all the buildings in the game are completely empty, and a fair amount of them also have severe clipping issues that are just painful to look at. There was one building with an enormous boulder sticking out of the ground, nearly completely blocking the back doorway. On a similar note, I've also seen tons of instances of grass clipping through the floor of many buildings. Also, the voice acting is so bad it's almost funny, but not quite. It's literally the same voice multiplied by however many enemies are on screen. They all spout the same exact handful of voice lines, and within the first 20 minutes or so, I guarantee you that you'll be hearing it at least a few dozen times. I've heard enough actual, genuine German in my day-to-day life that I'm able to distinguish between someone speaking authentic, actual German, and someone trying to do an impression of a German accent. I'm almost positive that this is the latter of the two. This entire game is a classic go-to example of how not to make a video game. I don't care if this was made as a student project for a university class. If I was the professor handing out the final grade on the portfolio of whoever made this flagrant and excessive act of developmental debauchery, you can bet all the gold in Harry Potter's Gringotts vault that the creator of this game would not be getting anywhere close to a passing grade. This game is little more than a downright scam, with a bunch of randomly tossed together Unity store assets comprising arguably the entirety of the content featured here. The game is making a remarkably bold claim in passing itself off as a game. The only functioning thing I see in this utter disgrace is the .exe file. It's playable, technically, but who would want to play this disaster for any length of time, let alone buy it? This is the kind of garbage you'd expect to see on something like GameJolt or itch.io, as a very early prototype of some future game. If that's all this was, I normally wouldn't care. It's the utter shameless audacity of asking people to spend $4 on this hunk of unredeemable garbage that catches me by surprise. But I suppose it shouldn't really. The days of Valve actually giving a shit about Steam being the go-to cool place for hard-working indie developers to release their games is long in the past. The fact that literally every single week, if not every single day, hundreds of these shitty asset flip games clog up Steam is ridiculous. If I was a indie developer, I'd probably leap at the chance to sign a deal with Epic Games. I know the Epic Games Store has its issue. They're not a darling angel, and their platform feature-wise is a bit lackluster even now. But at least I know that my game isn't going to get instantly buried beneath a pile of shitty asset flippers like here on Steam. It's hard enough to succeed as a game developer, but with Steam's inability to properly police their platform and indeed embracing a ambivalent carte blanche attitude, you're just literally incentivizing monetarily this nonsense on an increasingly grander and grander scale every year. Either this developer is actively looking to be an out-and-out scammer, or they just didn't care enough about their game to put in the effort into actually making a game. Whether indifference and laziness is the reasoning, or whether it's out-and-out greed, it doesn't really matter. Stay far, far away from this game and any other game this developer may or may not plan to release, until the day comes when they make a conscious effort to produce an actual game, not a half-assed, broken, and utterly worthless imitation of one. On that note, that's where I think I'm going to wrap it up for today. If you want to support the work I do in this channel, do consider subscribing and clicking the bell to opt into getting notifications whenever a new video goes live. I record new game reviews, first impressions, and other gaming critique-related content every week. As we're still just barely into the second quarter of 2021, there hasn't been an enormous number of interesting games to review. Clearly, because I'm busy reviewing stuff like this shit in the meantime. Also, I'm currently a full-time student and part-time retail worker, so there's that too. But as we get further into the year, I expect the game release calendar will start to ramp up once again. Until then, don't worry, I have a couple of actual games to review, not just this dog tripe. As ever, I'll be curious to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. As pretty much anyone who's subscribed to the channel knows, I'm fairly active in the comments section. Most times I respond to comments within hours, if not minutes. So if you've got something to say or talk to me about, I'll be right here. Likewise, as most of you loyal, longer-term followers will already know, I'm currently aiming to cross over 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If I do so, I plan to give $100 to Team Trees, a non-profit initiative aimed at combating climate change by planting millions of trees every year. Since its founding in October 2019, the group has planted over 22 million trees. I'm a big believer in giving back. Last year I promised I would give $50 if my channel hit 1,000 subscribers. Well, I'm doubling down this year. So if you're looking for a secondary incentive to subscribe to me, aside from wanting to stay up to date with the reasonably decent content I make, there you go. That said, this is WarriorDan signing out. Stay awesome everybody, stay safe, and peace out.